Heiken, 9 o'clock at night. Boom. The door of the Hilton hotel room was slammed open, and a woman in a red dress ran out panting. Bitch! I can't spare you today. On the floor of the room, a bloated man sat down. At this moment, he was holding his blood-stained neck with one hand and his face was hideous. President Wang, how are you? Are you okay? Several bodyguards immediately stepped forward and helped him up. Snapped. The man slapped him with a slap, a bunch of trash. Don't chase it yet. Yes, yes. You guys, take the elevator downstairs to block the door. You guys, block the elevator and the entrance. If she runs away today, you will all pay for my life. Yes. Su Xianguan helped the wall to escape, staggering a bit, but his eyes were full of coldness. Damn it! What exactly is going on? Wasn't she killed by that pair of dog men and women? How come back to that hotel 10 years ago? Before she could think about it, she ran to the end of the corridor. There are 2 roads at the end, one on the left and the other on the right. She frowned, she couldn't remember which direction she ran in the previous life. The footsteps behind her are getting closer and her body is getting hotter and hotter, too late. She gritted her teeth and ran to the left. But at the end, there is no exit. Su Xianguan's heart sank, bad, wrong choice. A layer of cold sweat oozes out of her forehead, and she quickly looked at the guest rooms on both sides. God let her live again, wouldn't it be to play with her? Quick! Go after it! The man behind was almost chasing the corner. She gasped harder, her heart pounding. At the very moment, he slammed into a door at the end of the corridor. Boom! A stagger, she ran into it directly. It wasn't her strength, but the door, which happened to be unlocked. She locked the door neatly, leaning her back against the door panel, panting hard, her whole figure seemed to be fished out of the water, her chest undulating violently. It's really an inexhaustible road. Is she born again? Otherwise, how could you return to the night 10 years ago? A coldness flashed in her eyes. That's okay. Relieve her life, she will never spare those who have harmed her in the previous life. In the room, the lights were off. In the cool moonlight, a tall figure stood in front of the big French windows. His cheeks were shrouded in a shadow, and through the whitish moonlight, he could still see his slender, sharp black eyes, like a lone eagle in the night, cold and arrogant, but also arrogant. Without waiting for her to return to his senses, he turned around and said coldly, "Get out." "Sir. I just want to stay here for 10 minutes, I promise I won't disturb you." "Get out." Su Xianguan lowered his eyes, his 2 bare hands clenched into powder fists. "Smelly man, it's really difficult. Only out of the tiger's mouth, and into the wolf's den. I don't know what kind of luck it is." Seeing her motionless, he moved his long legs and walked towards her. Mu Biting stopped in front of her, his big icy hand squeezed her jaw, his eyes were shady. "What tricks do you want to play this time, et?" "Trick? What is he saying?" Su Xianguan's mind was a little confused, and she didn't understand what he was talking about. Does this man have delusions of persecution? Neuropathy? Before she could speak, he lost patience, pressed the handle of the door with his big hand, and pushed her out. Hearing the sound of footsteps chasing outside the door, Su Xianguan's heart tightened, subconsciously put his arms around his neck, and kissed his thin lips on his toes. Only after being opened a cracked door, she was kicked gently with her foot. He was stiff all over, obviously not expecting her reaction. Soft. Sweet. Her pink tongue, some jerky licks kissed his thin lips. But the thing is that he doesn't even hate this woman's touch. Mu Biting subconsciously pushed her away. Su Xianguan slightly moved away from his thin lips an inch, put his arms around his neck, stared at him pitifully, and said softly, "Mr. must be so cold and ruthless." Her hair was scattered on his chest, and his heart tickled. Mu Biting's cold eyes became deep, and the corners of his lips became more playful. In the next instant, he changed from passive to active. One big hand clamped on the delicate chin, the other held her back, leaning over and rudely deepening the kiss. "Well!" Su Xianguan shouted, "Asshole! I really thought she was a free lunch that was not delivered to her door." His tongue seemed to have a hyoid bone, strong and rough, and it was so deep that she had to be forced to bear it with her small mouth open. Bastard! There was a glimmer of water in her eyes, and suddenly a silver-white dagger was added to his neck in her hand. "Don't move!" Su Xianguan said softly, dripping with sweat. She stole the dagger from Wang Yongsheng, and at this moment, it oozes a touch of blood across his neck. Mu Biting squinted her eyes, leaving her lips a little bit reluctantly, and said quietly, "I'm not brave enough. So, you'd better be behaved. Lonely man and widow, the moon is black and the wind is high, I really can't guarantee that I won't do anything to you." Su Xianguan smiled confusingly, but his eyes were cold. The tip of his tongue gently licked the corner of his lips, and a flash of danger flashed in his eyes. "Ha! Interesting. It seems that it was a little wild cat who broke in today." In the next instant, a big hot hand suddenly appeared on her hip flap. "You!" Su Xianguan's face flushed, like a cat stepped on its tail. Mu Biting pulled up his lips and turned a blind eye to the dagger. Instead, he forced her into his arms, her body pressed against his chest. "How about me, hey? Don't you dare to touch it, be careful that I chopped off your paws." Su Xianguan became angry from embarrassment. Bastard! She thought that using a kiss would let him relax. But I didn't expect that this smelly man would dare to take advantage of her at this time. Really? Mu Biting raised his eyebrows, provocatively, with his big hand stroking her body inch by inch through the thin placket, hot and scorching. "Asshole!" Su Xianguan was so hot that his brain was blank. Raising his hand, the dagger pierced into his shoulder. He was cold all over, moving faster than her, and instantly squeezed her wrist. "You let me go!" Su Xianguan clenched her teeth and persisted, but she couldn't match his strength. She was limp at this moment, and her little hand was loosened uncontrollably, and the dagger fell into his hand. In the next moment, there was a chill on his neck, with a slight chill. The situation has completely changed. What is the ability to bully a woman? She breathed hot, slowly speaking. "Are you a woman?" He raised an eyebrow. Su Xianguan was very angry, gritted his teeth. He is blind. Thinking about her front convex rear, Alice is not a woman anymore. Forget it, she bears it. Those who know the current affairs are the best. His gaze swept across her chest, and the dagger was slightly hardened, and the fabric at the neckline was torn apart. The light pink lace is wrapped in 2 pieces of snow mussel. It has a very beautiful shape. Under the light pink lace, it looks like a perfect work of craftsmanship. Suddenly, Su Xianguan's face turned green. "Sir, I'm underage, you are breaking the law." She said this, but she didn't believe it. Who made her look like she was always innocent? No one stopped her at nightclubs when she was 16, let alone pretend to be tender in 20 this year. But in this case, let the dead horse be a living horse, doctor. Facing her shining eyes, he said lightly, "It's okay, it just so happens that I like to nurture." The dagger picked up her skirt lightly. She leaned against the cold wall, holding her breath, a layer of fine sweat oozing from her forehead, a little nervous and scared. In any case, she has never been so frivolous by a man in her 2 lives. She is not afraid, that must be pretending. Mu Biting chuckled slightly, his dagger pressed against her thigh and moved slowly. Su Xianguan trembled all over, closed his eyes subconsciously, his eyelashes trembling lightly. He curled the corners of his lips, his eyes were cold. With a clang, the dagger fell to the ground. He pinched her waist with his big hand, leaning against her ear, and whispered, "That won't work." Su Xiongguan's breathing was getting hotter and hotter, and he was almost completely devoid of reason. Just when she thought she couldn't escape today, he pushed her away and said coldly, "But, I'm not interested in a woman like you." Ah! She was unprepared, her center of gravity was unstable, and she fell backward instantly. Subconsciously, he pulled his tie. Mu Biting didn't check it, but he didn't expect to be dragged down by her, and was directly dragged down by her. With a plop, the two fell on the carpet together. He is up and she is down. It hurts. Su Xiongguan frowned in dissatisfaction. This bastard, is it specifically for her? It doesn't count as a sharp pain from falling to the floor, his belt buckle stuck in her waist and abdomen, she was in pain. Perceiving his strangeness, she looked at him dimly, "Isn't she not interested in me?" "Shut up!" Mu Biting said angrily, her softness made him a little bit out of control. Su Xiongguan's eyes flashed with confusion, and in the next instant, he opened his mouth and bit his Adam's apple vengefully. Mu Biting snorted, a layer of sweat oozing from his forehead. "Damn woman! How dare you bite him?" She gradually loosened her mouth, but it gradually turned into a piece of kiss, which fell on his apple, itchy. After a while, her little hand touched his abdomen, trying to remove his belt buckle. Mu Biting's whole body became stiff, his nerves tense, and big beads of sweat oozed from his forehead. He looked at Su Xiongguan with a gloomy look, and squeezed a few words between his teeth, "Woman, you're playing with fire." Su Xiongguan closed his eyes and grunted uncomfortably, "It hurts, the belt buckle is really stuck and she hurts too much." "Hot, so hot." The clear and pleasant smell on his body made her a little emotional. The effect of the medicine is getting stronger and stronger, and the reason is completely dissipated by desire, she only has instinct. With blindfolded eyes, she pulled up his clothes in dissatisfaction. Mu Biting's eyes were dull and unclear, and he wanted to push her away. "I don't know what magic this woman has, because he is always out of control over her." Her gaze fell on her hot red face, her throat rolled heavily, her gaze getting deeper and deeper. In the next moment, he didn't hesitate anymore. He picked her up, turned and walked towards the soft big bed. The temperature in the room is getting higher and higher, and it is charming. The next day, sunlight penetrated the gaps in the curtains, and a beam of light obliquely fell on her face. Su Xiongguan raised his hand to cover it, and slowly opened his eyes. There was no one in the luxurious suite, and her skirts, high heels, and pink underwear were thrown on the carpet to show the madness of last night. She sat up slowly, rubbed her temples, and had a headache. After she was drugged in the last life, she obviously escaped from Wang Yangshen's hands. It is hateful that this life ran in the wrong direction and encountered a pervert. The frantic and confused fragments of last night flashed in her mind, and she was a little lost. In the darkness, she couldn't see his appearance clearly, but vaguely remembered his sharp black eyes and sharp outline. Looking across the dark red on the bed, she frowned slightly. "I've seen it all through ups and downs, and she's not going to be hypocritical for a layer of film, but after all, she is not as calm as she imagined." A few minutes later, she condensed her thoughts and came to the bathroom with her sore body. Standing in front of the huge mirror, she stared into the mirror blankly. The woman in the mirror has red lips and white teeth, a face full of collagen, and a fluffy chestnut curly hair, like a fairy who has fallen into the world. She looked at herself in the mirror and slowly stroked her cheek. Is this really, not a dream? Is she true, back 10 years ago? Back to the age of 20? Her eye sockets gradually moistened, and two familiar faces gradually emerged in her mind. A coldness flashed in her eyes. "Li Qingqing, Song Ziming, wait for me. Since God has given me a chance to do it again, I will never make you feel better." Su Xiongguan took a shower, his body was sour and weak, his eyes were a little gloomy when he thought of the abnormality of last night. Half an hour later, she wrapped a bath towel and opened the bathroom door. A housekeeper and 6 maids in black and white suits stood neatly in front of the bathroom door. Su Xianguan frowned and looked at these uninvited guests coldly. "Miss Su, please." The butler bowed slightly, and a maid put on a sky blue dress. The skirt is covered with a dust cover and looks good quality. Su Xianguan raised his eyebrows and walked into the bathroom unceremoniously to change it. When she came out again, the skirt was already on her, and the elegant sky blue set off her like an elf. The butler's eyes flashed with surprise, but she quickly calmed down. And one of the maids, a maid with a nice look, had a deep look of jealousy in his eyes. The butler once again ordered a pair of silver-white high heels, the size of which was just right. Su Xianguan changed his shoes, walked past a few people without any haste, sat down, and raised her legs gracefully, like a queen who is coldly watching all living beings. "How many can you explain your intentions now? We are here to do the aftermath work at the order of the young master." "Hey, aftermath!" When the words were over, a maid brought a tray with a cup of warm water on it, and 2 white pills on the palm-sized porcelain plate. "Young master does not want or allow you to conceive his heirs. For the sake of future troubles, I hope you will cooperate." The butler stood aside and spoke again. Su Xianguan's lips curled up. What was she supposed to be such a big battle? It turned out to be an afterthought. He wants to, but she still doesn't want to give birth. When the words fell, Su Xianguan happily swallowed the 2 pills together without waiting for the housekeeper to make a sound, and drank saliva. The housekeeper was slightly startled, as if he didn't expect it to go so smoothly. Su Xianguan looked at him with a non-smiling smile. "Okay." Turning his head, he nodded to the beautiful maid. The maid nodded slightly, then picked up a pick from the tray and walked indifferently to Su Xianguan, with a deep jealousy in her eyes. "Miss, please open your mouth." Su Xianguan frowned and looked at the maid in front of him. The maid's expression contained a touch of contempt, and her condescending appearance made people not think she was a servant, but like someone's daughter. The butler explained to the side, "Miss Su, rest assured, we are not malicious, just want to make sure you swallow the pills. Your young master is really..." Before Su Xianguan's words were finished, she opened her mouth, and the maid in front of her rudely stuffed the pick in her mouth, pinched her cheeks with the other hand, and a flash of delight flashed in her eyes. The pick pressed her tongue hard, in order to be able to see her throat clearly. Make sure she did not hide the pill in her mouth. Snapped. Su Xianguan felt a humiliation in his heart. He waved the pick to the ground, got up and slapped the maid. The maid's cheeks were sore, she took 2 steps back subconsciously, and her face was shocked. Do you dare to hit me?" Su Xianguan stared at her coldly, his eyes cold. "Who gives you the courage?" The maid was stunned, and she was about to speak subconsciously. The butler pulled her aside and bowed and said, "Sorry Miss Su, we are also following orders." "By order? By whose order? If it's your young master's order, tell him to come here in person." A coldness flashed through Su Xianguan's eyes. You don't have the qualifications yet. She will never allow anyone to ride on her head again." The housekeeper came back to his senses, a little surprised at her aura, but still did his duty. "There are many offences, please also Miss Su Haihan, the young master is honourable, and we are also cautious." Su Xianguan sneered. It seems that she was still a big man who slept yesterday. "Since the matter has been settled, we shall leave first." The maid who was slapped by her gave her a bitter look, then turned and left with the housekeeper unwillingly. Su Xianguan narrowed his eyes, looked at the box of tea on the bedside, and said coldly, "Wait." The butler paused slightly and turned around. The smallest box of Durex drew a perfect parabola in the air and landed firmly in his hands. "Transfer it to your young master for me. A acquaintance is considered fate. This is a meeting gift I gave him." The butler frowned and looked at her. She curled her lips and smiled, her eyes were sneered, but she was amorous. An hour later, the butler appeared in front of an office in the Emgrand building. After Dong Dong knocked on the door, a low voice came from the room, "Enter." The office is very large, with a simple and atmospheric modern style. A long figure stands in front of the huge French windows with its back facing the entrance. The whole body is cold and cold. The housekeeper stood respectfully on one side. "Master, this is the information about Miss Su you want." Hearing the sound, the man did not speak, as if thinking about something. It took a full few minutes before he retracted his gaze, turned around and walked to the desk to pick up Su Xiongguan's materials, and said in a deep voice, "Is it done?" "Miss Su is very cooperative." Mu Baiting's expression eased slightly, and he threw the information on the desk. "Go out." The butler did not move, a little nervous. "Master, Miss Su said that there is a meeting gift, please let me pass it to you." "Oh." The butler was a little nervous, and stood still stiffly. An impatience flashed across Mu Baiting's eyes. "You know that my patience is limited." The housekeeper stiffened, stiffening his scalp, holding a box of ultra-small Durex in both hands, and placing it on the desk tremblingly. Mu Baiting's gaze fell on this meeting ceremony, his eyes deep. The light green box, the smallest size, and naked provoke him. His face was a little gloomy, and a touch of evil flashed in his eyes. "Ha, Su Xiongguan? Very good. It seems that the lesson he taught her last night was not profound enough." The butler kept his head down, and did not dare to breathe. In just a few seconds, he broke out in a cold sweat. Mu Baiting sneered, threw the box of Durex into the drawer, picked up Su Xiongguan's information again, and looked at it word by word. On the other hand, after Su Xiongguan left the hotel, he did not meet Wang Yangshen's people, saving a lot of trouble. She drove a car and planned to go home first before making long-term plans. After all, the rebirth was too sudden, she didn't have much preparation yet. Until the car gradually drove into a familiar street, she suddenly remembered that today is her father's birthday. In the previous life, because of the birth of Wang Yangsheng, she did not return all night. At that time, she was young and frightened and scared, so there was no idea to prepare gifts for her father. But at the birthday banquet, she was splashed with dirty water by her stepmother and Su Yufei, and her reputation has been ruined, and she has always been considered drug-addicted, abused, and dependent on unspoken rules when she entered the entertainment circle. "Master, please change to Century Commercial Building." After an hour. A duplex villa on Pangjiang Road. She stood in front of the gate with complicated thoughts. This was a birthday party hosted by her father and many celebrities were hired. In the last life, her reputation has been bad. But at first, it was just a rumor, but at this banquet, she was confirmed by the mother and daughter as evidence of the abuse. Of the contradiction between his father is getting deeper and deeper. Su Xiongguan let out a sigh of relief. In this life, she will never let the mother and daughter frame her again. "Little, Miss." Chen Ma saw Su Xiongguan and was taken aback, only that she seemed to have changed herself. "Yab." Su Xiongguan responded indifferently, and her expression was dull, and Chen Ma immediately led the way. In the hall, guests and friends were crowded, coveted. Su Zhiguo was speaking on stage. Stepmother Lu Yuerong and sister Su Yufei stood beside him. The family of three was in harmony. After Su Xiongguan appeared, Su Zhiguo's face became gloomy. "Late night, why are you coming back now? Your dad's banquet has started for a long time." The stepmother said worriedly, somewhat angry. "I didn't finish my part-time job until this morning, so I delayed it for a while." "What a part-time job, it sounds better than singing. I clearly saw you and a man entered the hotel in a hug and hug." Su Yufei yelled disdainfully. As soon as he said this, Su Zhiguo's face became more ugly, and he looked at Su Xiongguan and said sharply, "Where have you been?" "Dad, I really am." Before she finished her words, she was interrupted by Su Yufei again. "Dad. What I saw yesterday was really true. My sister was in the Huipo hotel and hugged a man in his 40s. It was ashamed. Suds Higuo frowned. Late night, what do you have to say? Looking at this good half-sister, Su Xiongguan's eyes flashed coldly. Well, since you must say that I went into the hotel with a man, then show evidence. At this moment, a man in his early 40s was holding a wine glass in one hand, pointing to Su Xiongguan and said in shock, Are you the daughter of President Su? Everyone's eyes fell on him one after another. The man is a bit bald, has a big belly, is covered with luxury logo, and has vain feet, which is obviously excessive indulgence. Suds Higuo was the first to speak. Han Jianbang, do you know each other late? The old man called Han Jianbang was a little uneasy, and he looked at Su Xiongguan a few times more nervously, and said, Su. President Su, I really didn't know it was your daughter before this. Before he finished speaking, Su Yufei exclaimed, Ah! Isn't this the man who opened the room with his sister last night? As soon as he said this, Suds Higuo's face became even more iron, and the eyes around him fell on Su Xiongguan's body with contempt and contempt. I heard that the Su family eldest lady was indiscriminate, but I didn't expect it to be true. But this is too heavy. How can you be with an old man? Who said no? It's a pity that I have a good skin bag. I didn't expect to do such a thing. Listening to the discussion around, Su Xiongguan's lips curled up slowly. The method used by the mother and daughter is exactly the same as in the previous life, but it is a pity that she is no longer the ignorant girl in the previous life. Su. President Su, you can't blame me for this, but I paid the money. I didn't force Miss Su at all, Miss Su was willing. Han Jianbang explained a little uneasy. Hearing this, Su Xiongguan's eyes flashed with coldness. This Han Jianbang is a well-known embryo in the circle. He has a few small dollars, but he can't make it to the table. Right now, his words, both inside and outside the words, alluded to her that Su Xiongguan had voluntarily sold it out. Haha, Lu Yuerong's mother and daughter are really good at calculating. Su Yufei looked at Han Jianbang in shock. Uncle Han, you don't mean that your sister is doing sex, right? This is what you said, but I didn't say anything. He immediately shied away. A flash of delight flashed in Su Yufei's eyes. Su Xiongguan, an idiot, should have been swept out of the house long ago, and even dared to steal the limelight with her. It was almost death. Su Yufei turned her head and said, Dad, did you say that your sister is for the money? After all, you reduced her pocket money a few months ago, but you see, the skirts and shoes on your sister are new in the season now. Stepmother Lu Yuerong also spoke at the right time. You can tell aunt if you are short of money. How can you do this kind of thing? This is really. Under the fire, Suds Higuo was very angry, and he glared at Su Xiongguan. Don't kneel down for me. Why should I kneel? Su Xiongguan asked with a straight spine. Suds Higuo slapped his hand and slapped, Nyeza. Do you dare to talk back? Because he was prepared for a while, Su Xiongguan grabbed his hand and didn't let the palm fall. Why should I kneel? What's wrong with me? Father only hears one side of the story, so he believes that his daughter betrayed himself. She was a little injured and seemed very disappointed with Suds Higuo. Suds Higuo's heart trembled fiercely, a little hesitated. Could it be? I misunderstood that it was too late? Su Xiongguan turned around, looked at Han Jianbang, who was full of brains, and said coldly, You just said that I took your money last night, so I went to the hotel to open the room with you. Late, I know you don't want to admit it, but we've had it so many times, so I can't hide it. She sneered, Really? Then Mr. Han must know that I have a mole on my shoulder. Han Jianbang was taken aback for a moment. Obviously he didn't expect that she would ask like this. I know, of course I know. Then Mr. Han, please tell me, is this mole on the left shoulder or on the right shoulder? Han Jianbang was stunned and looked at Lu Yuerong subconsciously, but the relationship between Lu Yuerong and Su Xianguan was not good these years, let alone whether the mole was the left shoulder or the right shoulder. Mr. Han doesn't even know this, right? Su Xianguan said with a smile. Left shoulder. Han Jianbang can only guess casually, after all, there is still a 50% probability. Su Xianguan regretfully said, it seems that Mr. Han has answered wrongly. He is on the right shoulder. I remembered wrong. Yes, right shoulder. Right shoulder. Su Xianguan said with a smile to Yan Yan, really, since the location is wrong, is the mole in red or black? Mr. Han must have remembered it correctly, right? Facing a pair of eyes and Su Zhiguo's increasingly cold gaze, Han Jianbang's head overflowed with beads of sweat, his face became whiter and whiter, and he kept wiping, black, moles. Han Jianbang calculated that there were always more black moles than red moles. Unfortunately, Mr. Han got the wrong answer again. Red mole. I remembered it wrong, yes, right shoulder, red mole. Han Jianbang immediately changed his words. A bunch of nonsense. Su Zhiguo said angrily before the voice fell. Su Xianguan reduced the smile on his face, turned around, gathered up his hair, revealing a smooth and white back. Han Jianbang. Look clearly, I don't have any moles on my shoulders. How can I blame you? You want to be like this? Destroy my reputation. Han Jianbang's legs softened and he almost knelt on the ground. Su Xianguan snorted coldly. In her previous life, she suffered a lot from this kind of infamous stuff. So when she went to the mall just now, she changed into a high-necked halter dress. The area exposed was not much, but it was enough to see the two shoulders clearly. But she also had to be fortunate, but fortunately the perversion last night did not leave any marks on her shoulders. I. Han Jianbang was speechless, sweating like rain. Su Xianguan looked at him coldly, and approached step by step. Mr. Han's watch seems to be a classic Rolex model, but you must know that this model has never been only gold, not silver. Han Jianbang staggered back, and subconsciously covered his watch. Is the belt? The imitation is realistic, but the logo is facing the other way. He looked a little embarrassed, and then lowered his head to cover his belt. Shoes, it looks like handmade in Italy, but these shoes have always been custom-made in crocodile leather, and it seems that cowhide has never been used. As soon as the words fell, everyone around was looking at it and talking in low voices from time to time. Han Jianbang backed away again and again, his face was red and white, and he couldn't speak. Su Xianguan turned his head and looked at Su Yufei. Take a step back, even if I really want to sell Su Xianguan, I won't find people who are full of knockoffs to sell it. Are you right, Fi Fei? Su Yufei was taken aback when she was named, her face a little ugly. When did this become so powerful? Han Jianbang was unmasked in public. Fi Fei, what the is going on? Su Zhiguo said sharply. Then, maybe, I might have read it wrong. A panic flashed in Su Yufei's eyes. Su Xianguan sneered, that's a coincidence. As soon as my sister made a mistake here, Mr. Han came out to respond. I don't know, I thought you had discussed it. Su Xianguan, don't spit people. Su Xianguan's lips curled up, what are you so excited about? I just said casually. Fi Fei, apologize to your sister immediately. Dad. Su Yufei stomped angrily, asking her to apologize to the Su Xianguan in front of so many people. Apologize. Su Yufei's complexion was blue and red, especially ugly. She looked at Lu Yuerong for help, and Lu Yuerong immediately said to her, late night, don't be familiar with Fi Fei, Fi Fei is still young. Su Xianguan raised his eyebrows, being young does not mean blindness, Aunt Lu, right? Lu Yuerong was speechless, and calmly looked at Su Xianguan in front of her. What's the matter with this girl? Why suddenly it seemed to be a different person? Late night, your sister already knew that she was wrong, so please forgive her this time. Su Higuo said softly, a little embarrassed. Listening to her father's words, she smiled sarcastically, if you say forgive, then forgive it. Anyway, it's not once or twice, right, Dad? Su Higuo's face was slightly stiff, and his heart was not feeling good. Su Xianguan looked calm, and put the wrapped pen from his bag on the table aside. This is a birthday gift for you. The money is earned by my part-time job. Every cent is clean. If Dad doesn't, rest assured, you can send someone to investigate. When the words fell, she did not look at Su Higuo again, and walked through the crowd. I am not feeling well, so I went upstairs first. Su Higuo looked at the exquisitely packaged gift box on the table, his eyes were sour, and he felt more guilty. After going upstairs, she took a shower. In recent years, because of Lu Yuerong's mother and daughter's provocation, the relationship between her and her father has worsened. So just to prove her innocence is not enough. She wants to make Su Higuo feel guilty. She wants to change her father's impression of her. Only in this way can she gain a foothold in this family and expose the true colors of Lu Yuerong's mother and daughter. Turning on the TV casually, she looked at the screen blankly. In her previous life, she entered the show business 2 years later, ran for 5 years, played a supporting role for 3 years, won the Best Female match in the 29th year, and was killed by the dog and man at the age of 30. She lowered her eyes lightly, her thoughts a little confused. She didn't know where to start this life. In the previous life, she was too old and missed the opportunity. But everything is still too late in this life. She wants to be red. She wants fire. She wants to become a traffic leader. She must stand at the highest point, and want those who have hurt her to get the price they deserve. A gentle female voice on TV drew back Su Xianguan's thoughts. She sat up slowly, her eyes falling on a figure on the screen. It turned out to be her, Zhao Zining. Su Xianguan blushed a little. Zhao Zining was born in a famous family, and it is precisely because of this the summer of that year that he has a small reputation right now. Later, her life seemed to be open, and she won several female No. 1s in one breath, and completely became a popular traffic star, all the way magnanimously. In previous lives, people always like to compare themselves with Zhao Zining. Of course, I am a slutty, deep-witted slut, and a typical example of all negatives. And Zhao Zining is a gentle, virtuous, elegant, and kind-hearted national goddess, synonymous with all goodness. It is hateful, only she knows how much she has suffered in her hands. Then what kind of pure and kind goddess is? Obviously a viper with fierce means. As if thinking of something, Su Xianguan suddenly got out of bed and quickly searched Ding Sheng Media on the computer.